when my fiancé and my best friend drugged me and forcibly dragged me into that notorious New York mob boss's penthouse suite. I finally let out a sigh of relief. Finally home, my fiancé thought I was delirious from fear and grabbed my chin viciously. __. Company's survival depends on this deal. I heard Mr. Holt had a first love who died, and your face happens to look somewhat like hers. Be a good girl and serve him well. Once we land this contract, I might be generous enough to throw you some cash. My best friend covered her mouth with a coy laugh. Exactly. You should be grateful for the chance to serve Mr. Holt. Don't be ungrateful. As the drug took effect, I was roughly shoved through that gold-trimmed door. No one noticed the mockery flooding my eyes. As I leaned against the leather sofa, Mr. Holt, they spoke of that ruthless, cold-blooded man, was actually my father. Today, they personally delivered me back to my dad. Tomorrow, they'll learn what it means to wish for death. The drug crawled through my veins. Even moving a finger made my bones ache. I forced my eyes open, my vision settling on the hand-carved golden iris pattern on the ceiling. That was the Holt family crest. Before I turned 18, this flower was embroidered on the collar of every custom nightgown I owned. Beyond the door, Ethan's voice stripped with greed. Summer, is the intel reliable? Will Theodore Holt really come to this suite tonight? My best friend Summer couldn't hide her excitement. Paid 200 grand for information from his driver. He'll be here at 11 o'clock sharp. When he opens that door and sees a woman who looks exactly like his first love lying in bed, she sneered. No man refuses meat served on a platter. Maybe Mr. Holt will be so pleased he'll hand us that billion-dollar development project in the South District. Listening to their gleeful whispers outside, I bit down hard on my tongue. The metallic sweetness instantly flooded my throat. I'd worked myself sick with exhaustion and stress for Ethan's pathetic company. I treated Summer like my closest friend. In return, they rolled around in bed in the apartment I rented with my own hard-earned money, and now they didn't hesitate to pin me out like a prostitute, putting a price tag on me and sending me to someone else's bed. My stomach cramped violently. My nails broke off in the leather sofa, but the pain didn't compare to 1/10,000 of what churned in my heart. But they didn't. No, my father was Theodore Holt. His first love was my mother, but years ago, my dad had an affair with some starlet. My mother slit her wrists, and in my rage, I ran away from home. These years, my father and I maintained an unspoken agreement not to disturb each other's lives. He just kept depositing money into my bank account, afraid I might suffer. Ethan and Summer thought I was some helpless orphan squandering her parents' inheritance. That's why they dared to use me as a bargaining chip so brazenly. But while my dad was a bastard who betrayed my mom, he doted on me obsessively. Years ago, when some rich kid merely made a lewd comment to me, my father bankrupted him directly. If he saw me stripped naked and offered up as a plaything on his own bed by these scumbags, by then even begging for death would become a luxury for them. All right. Summer deliberately raised her voice. Once we land the Holt contract, we should finally have our wedding. Let's get that diamond ring Olivia was eyeing but couldn't afford. Ethan laughed indulgently. Sure, we'll use the money from selling her to buy you a diamond ring. I stared at the ceiling, the coldness in my eyes nearly freezing over. The intel was correct. My dad would definitely come here because today was his and my mother's wedding anniversary. My mother committed suicide in this room years ago. Every year he came here to remember her. Every year on this day, countless people sent him women. This year's surprise just happened to be me. The next second, the door suddenly burst open. Ethan strode over and grabbed my hair roughly. My scalp burned with tearing pain. Olivia, don't blame me. Blame yourself for being powerless and deserving to be sold cheap. Tonight, even if you get screwed to death, you better make Mr. Holt happy. Powerless? I looked at his smug face and my lips curved into an arc. Ethan, you'd better pray that after tonight you can die with some dignity. Still talking back, Summer stepped forward and slapped me hard across the face. My ears rang instantly. Get her changed. Mr. Holt will be here any minute. Summer smiled viciously as she tore off my jacket and forced me into a sheer, barely there lingerie nightgown. Just like a cheap __ Summer patted my face with satisfaction. I lay on the waterbed experiencing ultimate humiliation, slowly clenching my fists, stripping a daughter naked and sending her to her father's bed. Truly unprecedented. Next, Ethan and Summer grabbed me from both sides and dragged me out of the suite like a dead dog. At the end of the hallway, a dozen bodyguards stood with hands behind their backs, their oppressive presence hitting like a wave. The man in front strode forward. I half closed my eyes and recognized him. Hugo Smith. 7 years ago, he was just a low-level bodyguard, not even qualified to open doors for me. While I'd been wandering outside these years, he'd apparently become my father's capable right-hand man. Get in there and serve him properly. Once you're inside, even if you have to wag your tail like a __ you better make Mr. Holt comfortable. He shoved me hard and I pitched forward. I gripped the cold door frame, enduring the stabbing pain in my abdomen, and slowly straightened up. Ethan had just asked why Theodore Holt was in a bad mood. I sneered silently. Probably because misfortunes never come alone. 7 years ago, on the day my mother died, I pointed at his nose and cursed him to die without descendants. None of his women outside managed to give him children. On one side, a rebellious daughter who was his only flesh and blood. On the other, his dead wife, whose mood would be good. And just to please even his own daughter, had to be pimped out like a prostitute and sent to his bed. Theodore Holt, I really want to see this. When that door opens, how will you explain this to me? I pushed open the rosewood door. Crystal chandeliers overhead, handmade Persian carpets worth a fortune beneath my feet. The air was filled with top-grade agarwood incense, luxurious enough to suffocate. This scene, Ethan's eyes nearly popped out. __ how many hundreds of millions is that painting on the wall worth? Summer's eyes filled with greed. Any random base here could buy our entire office building. Ethan laughed obscenely. Once this __ serves Mr. Holt well tonight, maybe he'll reward us with a few things to play with. I leaned against the door, expressionless. My gaze swept over the massive oil painting on the wall. The woman in it had gentle eyes. That was my mother. On the sandalwood table beside it, a family photo was partially visible. Seeing me stare fixedly at the oil painting, Hugo narrowed his eyes and warned coldly, "Put away that disgusting look. A piece of trash who sells herself. You just happened to look somewhat similar and caught some luck." Seeing I had no reaction to his mockery, he lost patience and grabbed my wrist. I curved my lips into a mocking smile. "This is how Theodore Holt manages his men. Looks like you really should be sent to the mouth for a good lesson." Hugo flew into a rage and raised his hand to slap me. Just then, Ethan let out a shocked gasp. Wait, why does the girl in this photo look so much like you when you were little? He reached out to grab the photograph, touch Mr. Holt's things, and you're asking for death. With a sharp, furious shout, a woman walked in wearing 12 centimeters Louboutin heels. Vivian Jo, a partner under the Holt Group. She once volunteered to seduce my dad, and I watched him throw her out, but I never expected her persistence to pay off. My dad actually kept her around. When her gaze fell on my face, that pride instantly transformed into poisonous jealousy. This face, she grabbed my chin, condescendingly, her eyes revealing extreme madness, a lowly plaything. Putting on airs like this, those who don't know might think you're the mistress here. Kneel down and answer me properly. I shook off her hand, forcefully, my eyes flooding with unconcealed coldness. Get your filthy hands off me. What makes you think you can make me kneel? Before you touch me, you'd better think carefully whether Theodore Holt will chop you up and feed you to the fish. Vivian laughed in extreme anger, her face contorting, seeking death. She swung her hand to slap me hard. I jerked my head aside. Her slap missed, and she stumbled awkwardly. Who do you think you are? Vivian shrieked hysterically. I smiled faintly. What if I said I'm the one woman Theodore Holt can never have in this lifetime? Would you believe me? After all these years, he's humbly begged to see me countless times, and I've always refused. That counts as another kind of never having, doesn't it? As my words fell, the entire room became silent as death. Vivian froze for a moment, and the malice in her eyes erupted completely. Let's see how. You'll be unattainable after I ruin you. Today, someone hold her down for me. Ethan rushed forward and pinned me down, hard on the cold marble floor. Miss Jo, please calm down. This __ is shameless trash who doesn't know her place. She's got cheap bones. Do whatever you want with her. Her, if you like. I'll take responsibility. Summer quickly followed, stomping hard. While my hand braced against the floor. 10. Fingers connected to the heart. Cold. Sweat instantly soaked my spine. Vivian sneered and picked up a paper knife. She slowly crouched down, using the cold blade to lift my chin, never having. It's just because you happen to be born with a face you shouldn't have. The blade slid along my skin, bringing the tremor of death. A drop of crimson blood slowly slid down the silver blade and splattered on the floor. How beautiful it would be to carve the word __ on this face. Vivian raised the paper, knife high, about to stab down. Viciously, extreme danger closed in. I jerked my head up and screamed that name. Theodore Holt, get the hell out. Here, if something happens to me, you're going to hell, too. As my words fell, an eerie silence followed. Then came Vivian's uncontrollable laughter and mockery. What a shameless __ already acting like a __ before even seeing Mr. Holt. But Mr. Holt's name isn't something a __ like you can call. You're asking for death. The next second, her eyes grew even more vicious as she drove the knife point into my face. Searing pain exploded like an electric current. Hold her down. Hold her down tight. Without hesitation, Ethan pressed down on my hands, smashing my entire face toward the cold floor. The sound of finger bones completely shattering. Excruciating pain made my vision go black. Cold sweat instantly soaked my back. The man I'd once loved with everything I had was now personally sending me to the slaughterhouse, acting as the executioner's most loyal accomplice. A burning line spread from the corner of my eye to my temple. Blood instantly blurred my vision. Vivian let out a deranged laugh. Let's see how you act superior after I ruin this face. Ethan fawned obsequiously. Exactly. Miss Joe, if you're still not satisfied, after carving her up, just take some nude photos. Let's see how she seduces men after that. Summer sneered. Just cutting her face is too easy on her. Why not strip her naked and throw her in the fountain at the entrance? Let her know the consequences of offending Miss Joe. I listened to their celebration, a metallic sweetness surging in my throat. Every wound they inflicted on me would become an epitaph carved on their tombstones. My father's methods would teach them what it meant to be unable to live, unable to die. The next second, Ethan reached out toward the neckline of my nightgown. I struggled violently, the last of my strength exploding in this moment. But Ethan's knee ground even more viciously into my spine. My bones made an unbearable grinding sound. Stop struggling. You're just a piece of rotten meat ready for slaughter. Ultimate humiliation engulfed me. Vivian's smile grew increasingly cruel. She grabbed the last shred covering me and yanked hard. Her other hand pulled out her phone and quickly opened a live streaming app. Just throwing you out isn't enough. I'm going live, so all of New York can see just how cheap this underscore under really is. At this critical moment, with a deafening crash, that $1 million rosewood door was pushed open from outside. A towering figure, wrapped in thunderous fury, walked in. Who gave you permission to make trouble? Here, the madness on Vivian's face instantly transformed to delight. Holding her phone, she spoke in a cloying voice. Mr. Holt, perfect timing. I was just disciplining a presumptuous new toy for you. Ethan quickly looked up, wagging his tail like a lapdog. Mr. Holt, we specifically found you a woman who looks exactly like your first love, absolutely clean. We only ask that you consider our sincerity and give us a chance with that Western suburbs project. My dad's footsteps stopped. His gaze passed through the crowd and landed on me, lying in a pool of blood. He saw my face covered in blood and tears. That commanding presence instantly crumbled. 7 years. 7 years since I had last seen his face, and in that span he had become exactly what I had always known he would. Harder, colder, more terrifying to the rest of the world. But the second his eyes found mine across that room, all of it disintegrated. I watched it happen. The silence that descended had a texture to it, heavy, suffocating. Every person in the room felt it before they understood it. Ethan was still talking. Mr. Holt, sir, we specifically arranged. Theodore did not look at him. He looked only at me, at the blood on my face, at my hands crushed and swelling pressed against the Persian carpet, at the torn nightgown, at the paper knife still in Vivian's hand, at the live stream app still glowing on her phone screen. He took all of it in without moving. Then he said, very quietly, who touched her? First, not a question, just 3 words, delivered with the specific flatness of someone who has already decided what comes next and is simply gathering the sequence. The room didn't breathe. Ethan laughed nervously. Mr. Holt, it's a misunderstanding. Was it you? Still quiet, still not looking at him. Ethan stopped laughing. I watched the thing that happened to Theodore's face. Then it was not anger. Anger moves. Anger is dynamic. Anger has heat. What crossed his face was something older and colder than anger, something that didn't need to announce itself. He crossed the room and crouched down beside me. Slowly, deliberately, the most feared Man in New York kneeling on his own floor. His hands reached out and then stopped just before touching my face. Hovering, shaking, the way someone reaches for a wound they're terrified to make worse. Behind me, I heard Summer make a sound. Baby, Theodore said low, enough that only I could hear it. Look at me. I turned my head. His eyes were wet. Theodore Holt, whose name emptied boardrooms and silent senators, was kneeling beside me with wet eyes and shaking hands. You called my phone 4 times last year, I said. My voice came out strange, not crying, something past. Crying. You never left a voicemail. I know. His jaw worked. I know. The room had gone so silent I could hear Vivian's heels shift against the marble. It was Hugo who understood first. I saw it happen. His head turned fractionally, his eyes moving between my face and the oil painting on the wall, moving between my face and the family photo on the sandalwood table. His face went the color of ash. Then Ethan's gaze followed. Hugo's, the photo, then me, the photo. Again, his mouth moved without producing sound. Olivia, Theodore said still. That same low voice. Who touched you? First, I closed my eyes for a second. She carved my face, I said. He held my hands down while she did it. Theodore stood up. He took off his suit, jacket, and placed it over me. His movements were slow and careful, with the specific gentleness of a person who is managing something so close to breaking that speed is not possible. Then he turned. The room finally saw his face fully. Summer screamed, not a word, just a sound, the kind that comes when the body understands something before the mind catches up. Vivian took one step backward and hit the wall. Ethan's legs stopped working. He sat down on the floor without deciding to. Theodore looked at Vivian, at the paper knife still in her hand. You carved my daughter's face, he said, because you could never become the woman she resembles. Vivian's mouth opened. You spent years trying to replace my dead wife. His voice was still perfectly even. Then you tried to destroy the only thing she left behind. The knife fell from Vivian's hand. It hit the marble, and the sound it made was the loudest thing in the room. Theodore turned to Hugo. Her hands, he said. Start with the hands. Hugo crossed the room without hesitation. Ethan screamed. Before Hugo reached him, the sound he made was ugly, desperate, nothing like the smug voice that had called me cheap bones and rotten meat 20 minutes ago. Wait, I didn't know who she was. Break them, Theodore said. I listened to it from the floor, still wrapped in his jacket, my face stinging, my vision blurring at the edges from blood loss. I should have felt something. When Ethan screamed, satisfaction, maybe, or nothing, but what I actually felt was tired, profoundly bone deep. Tired, the kind of tired that has nothing to do with sleep. I had loved him for 3 years. I had worked myself into exhaustion for his company, stayed up until 2 o'clock in the morning fixing his quarterly reports, quietly called in favors from people I should not have been calling, people who knew my last name, who asked no questions, who extended him credit because I asked them to. He never knew. He thought it was his talent, his charm, his destiny. He had sold me to pay for a diamond ring for the woman he was cheating with. I pressed my cheek against the carpet and breathed. Olivia, my father was crouching again beside me, his hand hovering. The doctors are coming, he said. Can you stay awake for me? I'm not going to pass out, I said. Your fingers, I know. I could feel them. The kind of pain that sits in the bones, steady and enormous. I know. A sound came from Somewhere behind me, Summer crying, apologizing, saying it was Ethan's idea, saying she didn't know, saying please, saying she would do anything. Tell her. To stop, I said. Theodore looked up. Whatever expression he gave Summer, she went silent. Do you want them, Dad? He asked, very quiet, the same voice he'd used to ask Hugo to break Ethan's hands. I about it. No, I said. Dead doesn't cost them anything. He looked at me. Then you decide, he said. All of it. You decide. The live stream. In all the chaos, Vivian's phone had been knocked to the floor, the app still running. Camera pointing at the ceiling. 300 viewers watching a white plaster surface, while horror unfolded just out of frame. By morning, the clip beginning from the moment the door opened, Theodore's silhouette, the silence, Hugo's first order, had been shared 4,000 times. Theodore's people had not taken it down. They had let it run. The caption that got attached was not from any of us. It came from someone in the comment section, a journalist who had spent 3 years trying to find something on Theodore Holt and had stumbled onto this by accident. Theodore Holt kneels for no one until tonight. By noon the next day, every person with access to elite social circles in New York knew someone had sold Theodore Holt's daughter. Someone had carved her face. Someone had tried to live stream her humiliation. And Theodore had stood in that room with wet eyes. Thank you for listening to Channel Best Novel. The phones of the powerful started ringing, not to call Ethan, not to call Vivian, to call Theodore, to apologize for associations they had never actually had, to distance themselves, to make sure he understood. They had no part in this. Vivi and Joshua, business partners, started calling her to terminate contracts the same afternoon. The invitations stopped. The lunches stopped. The introductions stopped. For someone who had built her entire status on proximity to power, this was not just humiliation. This was erasure. She tried to reach Theodore 3 times. He did not receive the calls, not refusing them, not blocking them, simply not receiving them. The way you simply stop existing in someone's world because you no longer occupy any space in it. That hurt her worse than anything physical. I found out later she had gone to 3 parties that month and been turned away from all 3, politely, elegantly, with no explanation given because no explanation was needed. Everyone already knew. Ethan's company went quiet in the way that bodies go quiet, not in explosion, a cessation. The first thing to go was the partnership application. The Western Suburbs project he had sold me to obtain. The application was withdrawn and the project assigned elsewhere within 48 hours of that night. Then the investors started calling, not to invest, to withdraw, to check the temperature of the water and find it scalding and pull their hands out fast. His CFO resigned by email. His senior project manager followed. By the end of the week, his office of 11 people had shrunk to 3, and those 3 were only there because they hadn't found other offers yet. The accounts were frozen through channels Ethan would never be able to trace back to anything. He went to 2 banks. Both declined him. He tried calling contacts who had once responded to him within the hour. They stopped responding. He sat in a nearly empty office and slowly understood what it meant to be erased from a city while still living in it. And then finally, he found out, not from me, not from Theodore, from a mutual acquaintance who thought he already knew. You really didn't realize? She covered 3 of your major deals. Her name is Olivia Holt. She's been keeping your company above water since last year. He sat with that information for a long time. The math was ugly. Every time his numbers had inexplicably improved. Every favor granted by someone who had no reason to grant it. Every contract that came through when it shouldn't have. Her working herself sick for his company while he was sleeping in her apartment with her best friend, while he was planning to use her money to buy a diamond ring for summer, while he was holding her hands against the floor and crushing her fingers. He didn't sleep that night or the next. He stopped sleeping in any real way after that, and the insomnia carved him down into something smaller and hollower week by week. He replayed the moment Theodore knelt. He replayed my voice saying, "You'd better pray you can still die." With dignity. I had known the entire time who my father was, who he was, what I was walking into. I had let them deliver me to that room like a package because I knew what it would cost them when the door opened. That was the part that broke him most, not that he hadn't known that I had. The gala was 3 months later. I did not want to go. I told my father I did not want to go. He said the city had already decided whether I would attend. The only question was whether I walked in or was carried in the narrative of everyone else's version of events. He was not wrong. I wore deep blue, long sleeves. My hair was different, longer now, worn up. The scar along my temple was faint, but present. The surgeon had been excellent. It would fade further with time. I had not asked anyone to disguise it. I entered from the side entrance, rather than the main, which I knew my father found strategic and I found simply easier. The room was enormous. Crystal everywhere. The city through the windows, cold and brilliant. I had been back in my father's world for 3 months, and I still occasionally forgot how to breathe in it. A hand appeared at my elbow, not grabbing, just present. I looked up. Ren, 26, one of my father's lieutenants. He had been assigned to my security detail from the first week. He had the kind of stillness that meant training and the kind of patience that meant something different. Crowded entrance from the left, he said quietly. The other corridor is clear. I see it. Your choice. He never decided. For me, that was the thing I had noticed. First, I took the left entrance. The room shifted when I walked in, not dramatically, just the subtle redistribution of attention that happens when something important enters a space. Heads turned. Conversation stuttered. I moved through it without rushing. I saw Vivian Shaw across the room within the first 10 minutes. She was standing at the edge of a conversation, not inside it. Her smile was the smile of someone performing belonging they no longer possessed. Two of the women she was speaking to glanced at each other, and then one made a graceful excuse and left. And then the other, and then Vivian was alone with her champagne and her smile aimed at nothing. She saw me. I held her gaze for 3 seconds. Then I looked away. She had carved my face because she was afraid I might take something from her. She had spent years trying to be the woman in that painting. She would spend years more understanding that you can't become someone's past. I moved on. I was at the far end of the room when I heard his voice, not addressing me, addressing someone else, begging in the quiet, ugly way of someone who is very practiced at appearing composed but has run out of options. I turned. Ethan. He had aged in 3 months. Not the good kind. The kind that happens when something essential has been removed from a person. He was speaking to one of my father's associates, hand in hand, asking for something, asking for access to someone, asking for a meeting, asking for a chance. The associate excused himself with the same elegant precision everyone. Used now. Ethan stood alone. Then he saw me. He crossed the room before I could decide whether to move. Olivia, his voice was raw. Please. Ren shifted. Slightly beside me, not forward, just present. I looked at Ethan, at the man who had grabbed my hair and called me cheap bones and held my hands against the floor while someone carved my face and planned to photograph my body for the internet. I loved you, he said. The room was not close enough to hear, but close enough to watch. No, I said. You sold me. He flinched. I didn't know who you were. You knew exactly who I was. My voice stayed level. You knew I had worked myself sick for your company. You knew I trusted you. You knew Summer was my best friend. I held his gaze. You didn't need to know my father's name to know what you were doing. He opened his mouth. There is no version of this, I said, that leads somewhere other than where we are. He stood there. He had come here with something prepared. I could see it in how he held himself. Some scaffolding of words he'd built over 3 months of sleepless nights, and none of it was adequate. He understood this. I watched him understand it. His eyes went red. I did not feel sorry for him. I turned and walked back into the room. Ren fell into step beside me. We crossed the full length of the space. Without speaking, moving toward the windows, toward the city laid out below. In cold light, after a while he said, You all right? Yes. Didn't shake. No. I looked at the skyline. I'd been practicing. He was quiet for a moment. Then he reached past me and took a glass of water from a passing tray and set it in front of me. I looked at it. You've been standing for 2 hours, he said. You haven't touched anything. I'm Phoenix. I know. He didn't move away. I brought it anyway. I picked up the glass. Outside 3 months ago, I had been lying on a Persian carpet in a nightgown that wasn't mine, bleeding into my father's floor with my fingers crushed and my face cut, and every person I had trusted standing over me laughing. Now, the skyline was below me, and the room was full of people who lowered their eyes when my father walked past, and Ethan was somewhere behind me running out of people to beg, and Vivian Shaw was holding her champagne at the edge of a crowd that had turned its back, and someone had brought me water without being asked. I thought about my mother, about this day, every year, about my father coming to that suite to remember her, about how she had deserved someone who came every day instead of one day a year too late. I thought about the wish I had made at 17, standing at her grave, that her suffering counts for something. I was still not sure what to do with my father. The grief and the blame were still tangled in ways I hadn't finished working through. Some nights I lay in the guest room of the apartment he had set up for me, and I could not tell if I wanted to see him or if I just didn't want to be alone. He never asked me to forgive him. He showed up and waited and tried to be useful and let me decide the distance. It was not enough. It was also more than nothing. If you had loved my mother properly, I had told him in the hospital the morning after, with my fingers in splints and my face bandaged, none of this would have happened. He had not argued. He had just sat in the chair beside the bed and nodded and said, I know that. That was not forgiveness, but it was the beginning of a conversation that had no easy end. I did not go back to who I had been before that night. I had not expected to. I was not the girl who had her last name from a man who sold her. I was not the girl who worked herself sick for someone else's ambition while they used her apartment to cheat. The scar would fade, The broken fingers had healed, not perfectly, but enough. I was still standing. That was not nothing. Every wound they inflicted on me had become an epitaph carved on their tombstones. I had said that lying on a marble floor covered in my own blood. I meant it then. I mean it now. Leave a comment telling me, did they deserve what happened to them? Or do you think the revenge should have been even harsher? And if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more emotional drama and revenge stories.